Hey, y'all, I'm Bud Elliott, and this is my college football summer school series on Cover 3. I bring on the team experts from the 24/7 sports staff and ask them the questions I care about. No fluff. Which players will be toughest to replace? What position groups are sneakily better or worse than I realize? We get you the scoop on each team in 20 minutes or less. Let's go. Hey, guys, Bud Elliott here. I'm with Jackson Moore. It means we're talking little Cal. Jackson 4-8 last year, kind of a top 80 team in the power rating. So not like one of the worst teams in the country, but I guess a little bit disappointing. They were competitive in some close games, couldn't figure out a way to win them. Let's start talking some of the changes they're making to this offense because they are bringing in new coaches, new players. What is new coordinator Jake Spavital bringing in, and how is it going to be different?
Yeah, well, the Cows had the Spavital experience once before, and it went really good for them. The coordinators since then, not so much. So, hoping to revive some of the success that he had previously. He ran what they called the Bear Raid back then. It's a little bit different now, just based off personnel. Cal has equipped itself with a lot of tight ends and a lot of pro-style players over the last year, a couple of years with Bill Musgrave, and now even of that group, a lot of those players have hit the road through the portal with the changes, and a lot of new transfers are coming in. So, the one position that is kind of stable personnel wise is the O-line, which was the weakness last year. So, a lot of moving parts and a lot of places that need to be improved, but the schematics behind everything feel a lot more dynamic, and you hope that it shows in the results this season for them.
Yeah, I know Justin Wilcox is well respected by the coaching community. I couldn't figure out what he was doing with the office coordinator hire, and it turns out I guess the media guys were right on that one. Just wasn't a good hire. But before that, Spavital is a guy that's proven to score some points for sure. Sam Jackson at quarterback, the guy they take from TCU, looked kind of dynamic in the spring. Man, is this his job to lose?
It certainly was the case in the spring. They have brought in Ben Finley now from NC State. He's got some experience, probably going to be the biggest challenger to him. Fernando Mendoza, redshirt freshman, I thought he just had a spectacular camp, at least for being a redshirt freshman that I didn't expect much out of. Never did take any reps with the ones, but a guy to watch for there. Maybe see if he gets a little more of the responsibilities in the fall. But Jackson, his legs are about not matched from just about any quarterback I've seen in practice or in a game. I mean, it's really, really impressive the way he moves and how fast he is. The arm, it's okay. There was a lot of turnovers in spring, a lot of fumbles on those read options, and a lot of the intercepted passes. It feels like they could score 10 more points a game automatically with him on the field, but he might turn the ball over one or two more times to give up 10 points. So, if they can unlock what he has in his game, and I mean, it could be pretty special, but I think there's a lot of deficiencies as well, which make you think maybe a Finley could come in and steal it, or maybe Mendoza could get his shot at some point. But we'll see. The thing about Jackson is that he hasn't played a lot at TCU either, even though he was the backup for a while. So, you may go through his growing pains and watch him turn into something later in the year that he might not be right off the bat.
It should be pretty fine at running back. Jaden Ott had a nice year last year. They bring in two transfers. Let's go to receiver here. J. Michael Sturdivant hits the portal, goes to UCLA. With 24/7 Sports has him rated as a top 10 receiver in the portal, and they used him a lot last year. 106 targets, one of the few players in the country who received more than 100 targets. But they bring back most everybody else at receiver and tight end, and they also bring in what they take one, two, three or four receiver transfers. How is this room going to shake out in your opinion?
Yeah, it's interesting how much they've gone with receiver, because I feel like they were pretty satisfied, I think, with the starting lineup in spring. It seemed like you've got Jeremiah Hunter back. You've got Maven Anderson, who's a four-star guy. At least those two guys, it's hard to imagine them not being in the starting lineup, even with all the people coming in. Monroe Young, a veteran on the roster as well, was that third guy in the spring. So, but they added a whole lot. They brought in Brian Hightower from Illinois for the spring. He was hurt, so we didn't really get to see much of him. They even had some of their returning players out, guys like Tommy Christofferson, the guy that could be a a 6'4" kind of slot guy for them. I'm curious to see what he can do. But they bring in Marquise Montgomery, a junior college receiver who had a ton of offers. The top recruit in the whole class is Nigel Hunter out of nearby Salinas, and a high schooler that could probably get on the field right away. And they brought in a few more late in the process. Taj Davis from Washington was a big one that they got. Marquez Dortch, a former four-star from Mississippi State. They've got a lot of options to go to here this spring or this fall.
Absolutely. So, offensive line wise, you lose just really one guy who played in any significant reps in Ben Coleman. They get Matthew Wyckoff, who was decent, I guess, for A&M. Like not great. He was played in relief of their starting center, and then Derek Bowman as well from Houston. It looks like they're just trying to throw numbers at their center problem, right?
Yeah. Wyckoff is one that, he played SEC football, and that's a advantage over just about anyone else on the O-line roster right now. But I know he was kind of thrown in there and wasn't too successful in that position. But you've got some linemen that are experienced. You've got some that are kind of stepping into roles, and a bunch of younger developing players that probably aren't ready behind them. So whatever they can get to potentially shake things up. In the interior, I think between Brian Driscoll and Matthew Cindric, just one more guy in there could make a difference. And the tackle positions are probably the biggest concern, where you've got a couple of guys that have played and not played at a very high level and are probably going to be relied on again this year. But new O-line, new coaching schemes. New O-line coach, new coaching schemes. Chance for some of those guys to maybe flourish in a way that they weren't allowed to last year.
Makes a lot of sense, and I assume the offense will be operating at a much higher pace too. So it's a good thing they have all this defensive line depth back. I know the D-line wasn't great last year, but they had some injuries that they dealt with. They do get everybody back who played more than 50 snaps, which is kind of rare, including Brett Johnson, who I think last played in 2020. Did he take 2 years off? Is that correct?
So he suffered a broken hip in a vehicle accident. And then the next season, he was ready to go and suffered a season-ending injury late in August, right before the season this last year. So back to back, he hasn't played a lot. And surprisingly, he looked pretty close to himself last fall camp. It looked like he was ready to be himself, and didn't get to see it on Saturdays. So fingers crossed he didn't play in the spring. We'll see if he can be the guy in the fall. And that's something that this defense really missed. They had a lot of contributors, and most of them are back, but not really an impact player or an anchor on the interior D-line. Ricky Correa might be the closest thing to that right now. A lot of the D linemen that are coming back in this spring too. It's one of those spots where if everyone's healthy, perhaps it pans out. But they could be a few injuries away from being right back where they were this past year, which was an issue that kind of dominoed, I felt like.
Stanley McKenzie Seole, is he back in the mix as well?
He is back. Was not on the roster last year, is now returned, and got a lot of action in the spring. They were down to about 6 tackles, and they just rotated all spring, first, second, third. It didn't matter who else was on the field. So they all got some very valuable reps.
He should be pretty good at linebacker. I'd assume that they took David Reese from Florida. Is he a guy that's going to maybe start for them, or just kind of in the mix? What are you thinking there?
Yeah, Reese had a really good spring at that outside linebacker edge position. They're about 3 deep with some pretty talented edge players right there, which is promising. And at inside linebacker too, getting Jackson Sermon back for this extra year. And then they brought in out of Clemson, Sergio Allen. Yeah, you had Allen and Reese, and it's like, are these two guys just couldn't cut it at the Power 5 level, or at a higher Power 5 level, or were they just buried behind more talented players? And both of those guys exceeded my expectations this spring. Reese really had an impact year, and Allen was a guy that didn't make a whole lot of highlight plays per se, but was just solid, was always right where he needed to be, which is essential to be assignment sound at inside backer in that 3-4 scheme. And the most impressive thing to me was that Jackson running around. It seemed like Allen was the most consistent player that was there to stop that read option or track him down. I think he's ready to fill right in. They've got a lot of other inside linebackers on the roster that have been on the verge, but I think Allen's going to take that spot.
In the second year, they only lost one guy in Daniel Scott, but they bring in 4 transfers, including Patrick McMorris, a safety from San Diego State, who was a very good player in the Mountain West. Are you surprised they went this portal heavy? Does that say something about what they think of some of the bottom half of the secondary room, or was it just an opportunity to go get guys and they went and got them?
Yeah, I think a little bit of all of it. I mean, I felt they got Raymond Woody back at safety and um, Charles Woodson back at safety, but Raymond Woody and Miles Williams were competing for the other spot. And I thought both of them were pretty decent in spring, but we got the word from Coach Sermon the last week of spring that they were looking at a safety in the portal, and the day it opens, they get a commitment from a guy that is an All Mountain West player and whose brother was a student athlete at Cal. So it made a lot of sense why that came to fruition, and I think it's an immediate upgrade to be able to get someone like that. So again, another spot where they had some guys missing. Matthew Littlejohn, a junior college transfer, just kind of came out of nowhere and had a great spring at nickelback. Would not be surprised if he starts there, but even with Colin Gamble getting healthy, maybe they move Gamble the corner when he's back. Noel Williams had a terrific spring, a guy that I've watched a lot of in the Mountain West who exceeded from my expectations from what I saw from him playing in games. I mean, he was on fire all spring long. And then Lumagia Hearns is still around at cornerback too. He's still got a few years to go. So it feels like the personnel's been there. I don't know last year if it was a matter of just how good the Pac-12 offenses were, or the fact that the front seven wasn't getting a lot of pressure and they were in coverage a lot longer. But on paper, this is a secondary that should be pretty good, even at the Pac-12 with some of the other defenses that they're stacking up against.
You do have a fairly difficult Pac-12 schedule because they don't get to play Colorado, which will be improved, but probably still not a great ball team. And they also don't get to play Arizona, I think it is. So that means if you're not playing those two, and you can't play yourself if you're Cal, you are drawing Washington, Oregon State, Utah, USC, Oregon, Washington State, Stanford. Well, Stanford we're going to probably count as a win, and UCLA. That's tough. Why are they playing a road game at North Texas? Is there some kind of like connection there? Or do they owe them a game for stealing a coach or something like that? What the backstory there?
I mean, they signed up for a series. Yeah, I know. Covering Fresno State, they wanted that series, and they're a little peeved. They're going to North Texas. But, I know Cal is recruiting a lot in Texas right now. That's the only thing I can really point to of why that's an advantage for them. But they've been going FCS Group of 5, Power 5 for their 3 non-conference games, and they're not worried about traveling to Group of 5 schools apparently. Bud's mic cut out. So just to kind of summarize where Cal is right now, I think that they're a team that, I mean, they have aggressively addressed their deficiencies. They've overhauled the whole most of the offense, and I think it is a valiant effort, but I think it's going to be tough for them to catch a lot of the teams in the Pac-12, and I don't see it happening as far as that goes, but doesn't mean this team won't be better. It's just going to be tough to have too high of a ceiling with the way that the top 4, 5, 6 teams in this conference have kind of hit another gear in my mind.
Jackson, really appreciate it, man.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.